Okay, look, Schlatt, I've been watching your content for a while, and I gotta say I've been enjoying it. Your ridiculous chat, your funny friends, and who could forget that character that you put on? But recently, it hasn't seemed so much like a character as much as it has seemed like hiding in plain sight. Because the more I started looking into the things that you did in '99, the more that I realized that this is not a character, this is the real Schlatt. Someone who nobody suspects, because why would a murderer talk about it in broad daylight with thousands of people watching? But today, I'm going to expose you for the crimes of 1999, and I'm going to get you reported to the FBI. These are the Now, to be clear, I will only be covering what has happened in 1999 and before, nothing afterwards. So no Queen shit or any of that, just 1999 and beforehand. Now, where does Schlatt's crimes begin? In 1972. Schlatt's childhood. Now, in his adolescence, Schlatt didn't really spend a whole lot of time with other kids. He was either imitating Freddie Wong or Mr. Sark in one of his videos, or he was at the deli restocking shelves. Schlatt didn't particularly like other kids. He always found them annoying or uninteresting, and because of this, he was generally known as the quiet kid at school. But this made him a target of bullying, especially by schoolgirls.
Hey, Schlatt.
No. Goodbye.
They would berate you, abuse you, make fun of you. And you took it for a while. You knew that they would become uninterested if you just kept your mouth shut. And so you did. But then came one cloudy Monday at school, and Schlatt just wasn't having it. His latest video wasn't performing as well as he had liked. He had gotten back his math test that he had gotten a 70 on. Not bad by a long shot, but definitely subpar for Schlatt's usual straight 100s. And the girls were being especially cruel today. In the fight, Schlatt recalled his fishing rod he had taken to school for show and tell today, and he wanted payback.
They call me hook, line, and sinker. They call me the fisherman. They call me the hook man because in 1972 I brutally assaulted 2 women with a hook.
He ran at the girls and slashed them, and he felt good. He now had control over the girls who had picked on him for so long. He wanted to do that again. He didn't care that he was expelled. It's not really like he had any friends at school anyways. Now for the next very real account, we need to fast forward some 27 years to the infamous year 1999. I fucking can't see it. A long time since the hook of 72, but Schlatt never forgot what his first time felt like. Nobody really forgets their first. One winter day in '99, Schlatt was on a hike. It's what his therapist prescribed for him. She said he needs to be able to process his emotions, but nothing had really changed since he assaulted those girls at school. While he was walking, he came across the little kid who said that she was separated from her parents on the trail. Schlatt was annoyed at first. Who was this kid to start whining to him? But the girl just kept on bitching, asking if he could take her back to her parents. And then Schlatt got an idea, a plan, an awfully awful plan. He would lure this annoying girl into the forest and shut her up there. She deserved it anyway, just like those schoolgirls deserved it. And so he was methodical about it. He said he knew a shortcut through the woods and took her to an especially thick part of the forest and killed her there. It's a good thing I always kept an army knife on him. He was especially proud of his first murder, talking about it countless times throughout his channel's history.
Oh, there he is. They call me the Blade Runner. You know why? Because in 1999, I brutally slashed a 12-year-old after I lured her into the forest. There's nothing betwixt these I got it on the paper, boys. Follows. Jeez. You keep tempting me with these loose leaf papers. I'm gonna have to lure a 12-year-old into the forest pretty soon and stab them. We don't need a frying pan anymore. We need a knife. We need a knife. Now cooking mama's gonna realize why they call me Mr. Knife. This is awful. You know what I did with a knife back in 1999, cooking mama? One thing's for sure, it was brutal.
Despite this, though, he was nervous. He worried whether he would ever be caught for what he had done. But in a way, the nervousness only made it more fun. But then came the problem of where to hide the bodies. Schlatt stood in the forest for a moment and thought, and then it hit him. The deli. No one would ever suspect the deli. Nobody even went in there. So, over the course of a few days, he went to work with the body, cutting the body into small enough pieces to be stored in plastic bags, which he would then put in his backpack and take to work. It's not a perfect plan, but it worked for him. Now, Schlatt continued his trail of blood with 3 more elementary school kids. Over the course of a few weeks, he would wait for them outside of the school, pretending for the other kids to be their parents to get there before the school bus got them, took them back to his apartment, and then struck. But the more people he killed, the sloppier his methods got. At first, he was careful, gently taking the kids back to his car, refusing to answer questions, and shutting them up. But as time went on, his methods became dirtier, more grotesque. He started just dragging kids to the back of the school and beating them with his baseball bat. Right there. He thought he saw someone who had noticed him, but no matter. He used the same process. Cut, put into bags, deli freezer. Years later, Schlatt was interrogated about this, but he would just shrug off these questions. His new chops helped him hide his identity, and they couldn't pin anything to him, even though they knew he did it.
It's Wednesday. The worst day of the week. The day I brutally murdered 3 children. So the banker's gonna...
Here comes the offer.
Why am I getting another fucking call? What the fuck? Hello? 1999? 3 women? Fucking telemarketers, you know?
As time went on, Schlatt needed more and more blood to satiate his lust, and his methods became more and more primitive. Weeks passed since he had killed those kids, but Schlatt wanted to murder again already. The extreme lust for blood had been growing inside him for years, and he was finally able to let it all out. He excitedly grabbed the old bat in his attic from his young days of playing, but now its only purpose was to kill. He stalked 6 people walking home, knocked them out, and then stuffed them in the trunk of his car.
I'm very familiar with baseball bets. You know why? Because I brutally murdered 5 people with one back in 1999.
He drove them to where he used to play baseball as a kid, and he threw the bodies on the ground. He started bashing the bodies one by one until he got to the last. As Schlatt was finishing up with the 5th body, he noticed that the 6th was awake, waiting for Schlatt to tire himself out so he could successfully escape. No, he can't escape. He can't ruin his plan. He ran after him with all the strength he could muster, and he managed to hit him squarely in the backside of his head. He's probably gonna go to the police, and damn it! How could he let him get away? But it was too late. He was fast, and it's not exactly like Schlatt was in peak condition for running at the moment. After this, Schlatt didn't care anymore. He assumed that he was going to be caught in weeks, if not days, so he didn't bother covering anything up from now on. He would openly talk about his murders like they were jokes, and hey, maybe that would even help conceal his murders, make people think that he didn't do it. More people, weirder methods. This time it was 7, and all with his boots. He was grabbing drunk people on the street at night and hoping that nobody would see.
I'm the steel toe, baby. You know why they call me steel toe? Because in 1999, I brutally murdered 7 women with my steel toe Timberlands.
The more unorthodox the method was, the more it satiated Schlatt's lust. At this point, he was basically public enemy number 1, being called many names for the many atrocities that he had committed. If enough people saw him in public, he was bound to be killed on sight. His lust for blood now fully consuming him. At first, it had been a pulling feeling. Pushing him to do morally reprehensible things was now all that he thought about. When he was going to strike next, it had become him. Even if he wanted to, Schlatt couldn't stop. For what was one of the last recorded times of Schlatt's atrocities, he took a sword to a subway station, and I'll just let Anthony Padilla's interview clip say the rest.
Then I was at the Lexington Avenue 53rd Street subway station in New York City for about 30 seconds before I made my escape.
You know what they call me? They call me the Sword Man. Because in 1999, I committed mass homicide with a sword in a public place. But don't tell anybody that.
Although Schlatt didn't really try to cover up anything that he had done at this point, he still did some things, through the variety of weapons that he used. He almost never used the same weapon twice. A hook, a pocket knife, a pair of boots, a sword. And after all that had happened, Schlatt decided to move to Chicago, where he could maybe delay his imminent capture. Okay, now that we're nearing the end of Schlatt's crimes, there's always been one loose end that's been bugging me, but I think I figured it out. Do you remember the guy who got away from Schlatt? The one who ran away, who, if he told the police about Schlatt, he could have ruined everything. Walking down West Grand Avenue in Chicago, Schlatt was hiding his face. God knew he couldn't be seen. But as he was trying not to be seen, Schlatt walked face first into somebody on the street. As he was hurriedly trying to get back up, Schlatt recognized who this was. No, he couldn't get away again.
And here's the most important part. Let's count how many blankets I have. 1, 2, 3.
There better not be a
4,
fucking L'Manberg
5,
blanket.
6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Oh, map of downtown Chicago. Huh, interesting. There. January 17th, 1999. A man with lumps came up to me, gun pointed to my head.
This is a lie. This is a lie. Didn't happen. I didn't do that.
Schlatt held a man at gunpoint on January 17th, 1999. He had recognized him as the man who had run away, but he couldn't do anything to him. Despite being in a large public parking lot, it was still broad daylight, and Schlatt just ended up running away. For the next few months, Schlatt survived by stealing his friend Ted Nivison's truck and just driving around everywhere, trying to track down this escapee. After a while, he had got him. He stalked him for a few weeks, and then he used Old Reliable, waiting for him outside of a bar. Being almost killed does tend to worsen addictions anyways. As he stumbled out of the bar into the nice April air, the stark contrast of the light inside and the dark outside showing on his face, Schlatt pounced, wildly stabbing at him. But not too far in the distance, he saw a group of people walking towards him. No, he couldn't escape again, but it was too late. He had to run back to his truck. He ran around the corner and got back into Ted's truck. And no, how could he escape again? While playing Minecraft, Schlatt got this threatening message from the escapee.
Schlatt, or whatever you call yourself now.
Yeah.
I've been tracking you down for the past 5 years. I lost my memory for nearly 2 decades after what you tried to pull in '99. You thought you got me, but I'm back. And I remember now. I remember everything. April 9th.
You guys, should I move? In real life?
But all of this information is useless if we don't actually have an amount of time that Schlatt should be going away for. So the next step is to calculate the prison time of Schlatt so it's as easy as possible for him to get locked up by the FBI. Let's take it chronologically, starting with the hook incident. That's a hook, I think. Now, Schlatt running at those schoolgirls with a hook is considered aggravated assault. Aggravated because Schlatt very much intended to and did hurt those girls with that hook. And this is probably going to be carrying a sentence of 3 to 5 years. 7 is the most, but it wasn't as bad as stabbing or shooting someone, so 3 to 5 is definitely safe. Next, luring a kid into the forest and then killing her. Now, despite what I thought, in New York state law, first and second degree murders aren't based on premeditation, but on a list of qualifications, including whether the victim was a police officer, whether you tortured the victim, or whether you were serving a life sentence at the time. The list goes on. But since Schlatt doesn't fall under any of these, it's definitely second-degree murder, which is described as killing unjustified while exhibiting a, quote, depraved indifference to human life. And look at this guy. You think he cares about human lives, carrying with it a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility for parole because the victim was under 14 years old. Next up is the 3 kids. Same story. Second degree, victim under 14, so 3 more life sentences with no parole. As for the 6 people, since Schlatt knocked them out and took them to a baseball field, that's considered 6 counts of third degree assault, 6 counts of kidnapping, and 5 counts of murder in the second degree. With the assault, since Schlatt knocked all of them out with the intent to kill them, he would probably be facing the maximum amount of time, 1 year in prison. The kidnappings would probably land him 30 years apiece, and the murders would get him 6 more life sentences, but this time with parole, because Schlatt stopped being a pedophile. So 6 years for the assault, 180 years for the kidnapping, and 6 life sentences. When the 6th guy got away and Schlatt hit him, he's looking at another year for second degree assault. The next one is basically a copy of the last, but with 7 people instead of 6, with the same amount of time for everything. Now for the subway incident, despite Schlatt saying mass homicide in the clip, there isn't exactly a crime labeled mass homicide in New York, just murder. And since it's never stated how many people Schlatt killed, we're going to have to look at some details here. Mainly when Schlatt said that he was only there for 30 seconds. Based on this, we can safely assume that Schlatt couldn't have killed more than 2 people that morning. But since he refers to it as mass homicide, he probably did kill 2 people. so 2 more counts of murder in the second degree. Now, after this, Schlatt flees the state, but to do this, he steals Ted's truck, which is considered robbery in the second degree, with a sentence of 10 to 15 years. After getting to Chicago and recognizing the escapee, Schlatt holds him at gunpoint, which is assault with a deadly weapon, with a sentence of 1 year in prison. And finally, as for the stabbing shortly after, Schlatt is getting an additional 25 or so years for aggravated battery in Chicago. And after doing all of the calculations, Mr. J. Schlatt is getting 233 years in prison and 18 life sentences. Goddamn, 18 people murdered. But crazily enough, Schlatt is still out there in his house in upstate New York making shitty reaction videos. And so I'm dedicating this video as a message to any and all FBI officers out there. If you're watching, find this man and lock him up for all he deserves, for humanity's sake, because we cannot let this man, this animal, roam the streets of our great country any longer. Thank you for watching.